Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Grind Mindset Podcast. Tonight we have my co-host Joe Piersante, and our guest is Will Reese. I'm going to let Will introduce himself. I think he has an amazing story, and I'm going to let him take it from here. And I'll just chirp in or joke and add in once in a while. So,
Yeah.
Will,
Hey,
take it
thanks.
away.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Joe, for thinking highly of me enough to invite me on tonight to share my story with you guys, and hopefully it helps others that are struggling out there, perhaps with their purpose or desires of trying to get to the next level and whatnot. So a little bit about myself. Um, I was born in South Carolina to two wild and crazy hippies, and yeah, they were wild. My dad was out there, and motorcycle gang, and my mom was, she was great. She was top notch. But they were quite young, and their divorce happened when I was about 2 years old, and from probably two till about 10 years old, I moved back and forth with my mom and dad quite often. So like between Tampa Bay, growing up there, and Columbia, South Carolina, moving back and forth between the two. So I had to learn how to adapt, right? That what was I had to become a chameleon into different environments, whether it was living in South Carolina or Florida, just having to go to different schools. I went to four different schools in third grade alone, just to kind of set the scene there. Um, at about when I was about third grade, getting ready to go into fourth grade, my dad's wildness caught up with him, and he ultimately ended up in prison, and he did a dime in Florida for at a federal prison there. Then from that point, I lived with my mom for a while, up until I was about 14, and then I moved from when my dad got out of prison. I moved back in with him because a teenage boy needs his dad, right? So um, I moved in with him, and which he was living in Alabama, which is incredibly hot in in there in Mobile, Alabama. We lived there through high school and graduated early. I was 16 years old, right before my 17th birthday. Graduated high school, and I really had no purpose. I was kind of just going through life. I was young too, man. I was barely about to turn 17. Um, but I was a little, the wild streak was coming out of me a little bit, and I drove home drunk one night. Actually, came home an hour early, and got into a tussle with my dad. The next day, he's like, "Hey, like you either going to be grounded for 4 months or you need to join the military." And I was like, "Perfect. Can you take me to the recruiters?" And so at 17 years old, I joined the Army, and I never looked back. That was 28 years ago. My dad and I's relationship has grown since then, even stronger. I think that was a good thing actually for our relationship, is for me to kind of get out on my own and start my own life. The reason why I share a lot of that with you is because there's a lot to unpackage there, but really it's growing up in like uncertainty and unknown environments, very ambiguous. You never know where you're going to wake up the next day, and been moving around a lot. It really mirrors what the military lifestyle is like. So before I was in the military, I was starting to assimilate, if you will, the same actions that I would as a soldier. I'll break there for if you have any questions
Oh
on that.
no, it's funny you say that because I grew up a child of alcoholic mom, dad, stepfather,
Yeah.
and young, the divorce. And I get what you're saying about the drifting thing, and nothing's solid. So how do you ever figure out what path you could be on? I mean, when we're
Yeah.
young. So no, it's
And
awesome,
it's
man.
it's pretty crazy. Like a common denominator for
Mhm.
a lot of guys and gals who go into special ops is that they come from a broken home.
Right. Yeah.
I had no idea about it. I got involved with this more, and talking to people in groups where I do different activities with. It was just kind of blew my mind. But I can see how it kind of makes you more resilient and tougher too.
Yeah, Joe, I definitely agree with that. Not to get into too many details, put my dad on blast out there, but I saw a lot of things I probably shouldn't have seen as a young guy growing up. And I was really looking for, when I turned into the military, I got in trouble. Let's just call it what it was. And I deserved it. But when I joined, I clinched on so hard to it and just really went head first over the hill or over the cliff, if you will, because I wanted to be a part of something greater than myself. And I didn't want to do, I certainly did not want to move forward in my life as my parents did. Love them both. They're great humans. But it just wasn't the lifestyle which I wanted to have for myself. So, ultimately, okay, like I said, I joined the Army when I was 17. Once I joined the military, going through basic camp, boot camp, it really wasn't hard. I really enjoyed it, made a lot of good friends. And then thereafter, I didn't mention this, but so when I joined the Army, I needed to do it really quickly. So I thought the quickest way to do it was when I took my ASVAB was just to what they call a Christmas tree. You just kind of go down the center of the check marks and I see every answer. Well, that's not a great thing to do. And so whoever out there can hear this in the future is don't do that. It's a terrible idea because that's going to land you the worst jobs and opportunities in the military. So I had two options. The first one was MP, military police, or food service, which it's cook is what that is. Both of which work the worst hours in the military. They're both shift hours, quite possibly the most miserable, two most miserable jobs in the military and underappreciated. Absolutely. So you need security. The MPs, they're going to pull you over, right? But you need it. You don't like them because they're going to give you tickets. You got to eat. You don't like the food, but you got to eat. So you got to like the cooks, but they don't like the cooks. So it's a love-hate relationship with those two, what they call MOSs, military occupation specialty. And so I became a 92 Golf so my AIT was at Fort Lee, Virginia. I think it was about 8 weeks. And then ultimately my first duty station was at 3rd Infantry Division, which is, I show up there and I'm looking around and, my peers were telling me, hey, you don't belong here. You should be in the infantry. Cause I was really gung ho. I was really, like, as I said earlier, all in. And, one day, probably 2 months in, I see this guy who looks a little different. And, when you're a cook, you wear cook whites. So you've got a white top on and white pants and, chlorophams or your boots that are all shiny, right? Well, this guy walks in, he's got his pants tucked into his boots. He's got these jungle boots on. He's looking sharp and he's got Ranger on his uniform. And so I go over and talk to him and say, hey man, who are you? What, how do I become you, basically? And he introduced himself as I abruptly stopped him in the back there and just kind of say, hey, you're not going to pass without me figuring out what's going on here because I need to be you. And that guy was ultimately my first NCO when I got through Ranger training. It's called the Ranger Indoctrination Program. So he gives me the information, tells me, hey, this next weekend, come on up to Savannah and we'll sit down and talk about it. Well, that weekend I went to Savannah. It's about an hour drive. I show up and I'm wearing some blue jeans, some leather shoes and a t-shirt, polo shirt. And they proceed to give me a physical fitness test on the spot. So knock out 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups. Instead of doing the run, and they saw the shoes and the clothes that I was wearing. They asked me how fast I could run. And at the time I was probably running around mid 11, like 11:30, 11:35. And so they're like, all right, great. So they walked me over, did my paperwork. And in a month, I had orders to go to airborne school, the Ranger indoctrination program, and ultimately end back up at the same unit I was just at, which is is 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment out of Savannah, Georgia. That was my first duty station. I spent about 6 years there, had one deployment to Afghanistan in early 2002. So let me back up a little bit. I joined the military in 1997. And so that was, as I said, Fort Stewart, and then Savannah, Georgia thereafter, a couple months later. First deployment was in 2002. Decided to leave Ranger Battalion and try something different. I ended up in California at the National Training Center there. That was like the best, worst idea for a few reasons. It was the worst because I realized, one, I was out of special operations. It was the best because it ended up, and I'll tell the story in a minute, but my path ended up in the right place because I met some special forces guys who got me interested in becoming a Green Beret. So that was, so now we're at about 2003. I'm still doing the cook thing, going out to the field. I volunteered to work in the field because I like to do the most challenging things. And so we're feeding about 2,500 people every rotation, which is once a month for 2 weeks. It's quite miserable. 2 meals a day for that many people. It's terrible. Between the dust storms and just the heat, it's quite miserable. So about a year into that, we found out that we're getting activated in early 2004. By this time, I'm a staff sergeant. I've been a staff sergeant for a bit. And I was getting ready for the Sergeant First Class Board to make E7. And so we found out we're getting activated to go to Iraq. Now, the interesting thing about that is the last time 11th ACR was activated was Desert Storm in 1991, and before that, Vietnam. So they were a training center, and that's what they really made their history on is training training units to deploy. As I mentioned, I ended up making the list for E7 in about 6 years total. So now I'm promotable, and there's a couple people getting out of the military because they didn't want to deploy to Iraq. Myself, I was excited and eager and really looking for any chance to make an impact at work. And so a position opened up, and the battalion commander, without asking me, told me I was going to be the military transition team platoon sergeant. I had no idea what that meant. And so he said, well, go talk to the Green Berets next door at their own individual camp. Because now we're in Iraq, right? And so I walk over, introduce myself, this skinny, really, I looked emaciated because I haven't eaten properly in a couple of days as we've been traveling from Kuwait all the way up to Iraq. So I get over to their gate and knock on their door. And, the guy answers the door. He's got a huge beard. He's one of the Marine special ops guys. Well, they're doing what we call a relief in place, a RIP, with the Marines are ripping out with Green Berets. And so I told him who I was and kind of what was going on. And he's like, I think you should talk to the team sergeant for the Green Berets. So he walked me over. It was a guy from 5th Group. His name was Brad. Him and his captain, Captain Matt. So I told him who I was, and then, hey, my mission is myself and my platoon are going to go over, live with the Iraqi army for the next year, training them to some degree. Still quite uncertain. Now, mind you, I've only been in country for less than 24 hours, maybe 8 at the time. So it's a lot going on really fast. And also the platoon that I had, the platoon I had were guys that were literally written on a piece of paper, and we're finding out just before I had found out that they were in my platoon. And it was the less desirable soldiers to have, the misfits, if you will. It's the guys that from the other platoons that were either brand new to the unit, so they didn't know who they were. Guys that had gotten in trouble right before they deployed. And so there also my platoon leader is funny. My platoon leader was actually on patrol when he found out. So I had about 4 or 5 hours to figure out from the Green Berets what could I expect when I showed up to live with the Iraqi army. And you got to put yourself in my place. Like I'm 24 years old, almost 25. And so I've got, 36 guys below, that I'm responsible for living with the Iraqis, which that's mind blowing right there as itself. But what I didn't know was that I was being, God was putting me in the right position for the right, right time at the right place. And he was getting me ready for the future. I had no idea. I was just going down the road, if you will. So there I am. I get my guys together, and I introduce myself. Say, hey, I'm your new boss. I'm your new platoon sergeant. The platoon leader's out right now, but when he shows up, we're leaving. We're gonna go and we're gonna live with the Iraqi army. Pleasantly, I was surprised because they all were very ecstatic about it because we weren't gonna have to live near the flagpole. And so some of the guys that I had, I'll give you an example. I had a guy named Bam Bam. That was his nickname. This was his third deployment in 4 years. Another guy, his name was Smitty, or nickname was Pudge. That was his third as well. He had a unique situation where he got a DUI the day before he deployed because he was trying not to deploy.
Oh, geez.
Oh yeah. Which meant he took his truck, put it in 4-wheel drive, and did donuts on the base at the soccer field there, and just tore it all up. MPs show up, arrest him, put him in the drunk tank, and when he came out, he basically they packed his bags for him and they shipped him out. So about a week later, he's in my platoon. Him and Bam Bam both were great guys, and ultimately our success was primarily on their backs. I mean, they were. I had been deployed once, but they were really good at what they did. I mean, they had been there to Iraq, now on their third time. We had a very unique platoon there. We were mixed with infantry. We had some scouts. We had a tanker. We had some National Guard from the Mississippi National Guard with us as well. Very unique. And I would say, I don't know, we quickly bonded because we had to. I mean, it was like kind of shit or get off the pot kind of situation, sink or swim, really. Because our area of operation was like a brigade size. So you have a small platoon that we're working with about 4 Iraqi platoons all together, and covering such a large area. It's quite a feat. And so we were up for it, and we would say we did well, considering how we started. About 2 months in. So that was January of 2005. February 26th of 2005 was the first time I'd actually got a direct hit with an IED. In this instance, it was a vehicle-borne IED that was exploded in my face. I was sitting in the back of one of the Iraqi trucks. And so ultimately that led to myself and a couple of others getting medevaced. Spent a couple of weeks at the cache there in Baghdad. until my ears would stop ringing. I was very, very blessed. I didn't have major issues except for I had no hair. I don't have any hair now. That's just because of age, but I had less than, because my eyelashes, my eyebrows, everything was burnt off from the flash burn. And so that plus a shrapnel was kind of small. It looked like I got shot with not buckshot, but bird shot, in the face.
Probably looked almost like you had alopecia with all the hair burned off.
I did. I looked sick after a while. And so, I don't know. I feel like when you're in charge, at such a young age, looking back, I should have went home. I had a family at the time, so I probably should have went home, but I didn't. I maximized the time while I was at the cache to get better, and ultimately went back to my platoon and continued doing things. After that, so we had only been on ground for that was our 7th week when that happened. Immediately when I got back, the SF guys show up. We started, forming a bond with them, and that led to us doing complementary operations. They call it the Sunni Triangle. So it's 50 kilometers south of Baghdad is where we operated. As far south as Hilla and in the Basra area. But we would go out and conduct operations with these guys. And one night I'm sitting there pulling security and with one of the SF guys. And I was like, hey, I'm looking at his kit, looking at mine. I'm like, man, there's something's different here. Something's not like the other. So I just started
the Green Berets got much cooler stuff than you.
Oh man, if you saw what I had then, Joe, you probably would have just laughed and walked away from me.
Yeah, Joe was telling me they get all the high-speed gear.
I was telling my girlfriend's mom the other day because she had this giant flashlight. I said, "Oh, I had one bigger." Do you guys remember? And Joe, you're an old guy. You probably had one of these when you're on the beat, but it was a massive maglite. It had like 5 or 6 D-cell batteries in it, and I taped it to my my M16A2, and that's
geez.
The A1 is like the carbine, which was built from like Vietnam. It's just barely advanced from that, if you will. So that's what I was working with in Iraq. And so I said, hey, man, how do I become what you guys are? And now I had been in Ranger Battalion, and I slightly, I knew a little bit about Special Forces. I had done some missions with them before. When we did combat search and rescue, they would have their 18 Deltas with us. They always had they were giant, burly guys. Rangers were kind of smaller, skinnier. And these guys had massive rucks, and they were what I would learn to be is the quiet professionals. They didn't really say much. They never complained. They're always doing the right thing. And he leans over. He's like, dude, it's easy. You go to a selection. I'm sure he's like, you're young. You'll be great. You'll do well. I'm like, well, what should I train for? He's like, run, ruck, and lift weights. And that's all I did. So that was at the beginning of, that was March. And so from March all the way to December, that's all I did when I had any spare time, which wasn't much. About 2 weeks after returning, that would have been January of 2006. I signed a contract and did what they call like the bear program. It's like where you sign up for a bonus prior to going to do the training. And upon the completion of the training, you get a little bonus for being Special Forces. Not to add more things for me to think about and add stress. That's something that I did to myself. So about, like I said, that was what, February. So March of 2006, I went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection. at Camp McCall, just outside of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I was there for about 30 days. Probably 24 of it was actual going to the course. There's a couple of days in the front and back half of RAM processing, out processing. And then myself and my platoon leader that I mentioned earlier, we both went together, and we both were selected. He just retired as the deputy commander at 10th Special Forces Group. So that kind of ages me there a little bit as far as positioning and whatnot. But after that, we went through, he and I both started the Q course, which is the qualification course to becoming a Green Beret, where I was no longer cooking. I became an 18 Echo, which is a communications sergeant. And I actually blew my back out halfway through the course, and a little more adversity here. Now, remember that bonus that I said I had taken, right? Well, that's, now I'm super stressed out because I can't walk. I'm hunched over. And so I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing through all the way to the end of the MOS phase. The last thing we were going to do is go to the field. And in order to do that, we would do like a 15-mile ruck march to the field location. Whoa. And like I said, I could barely walk. So I popped a monster and I just started running. And I got to the first checkpoint, which is 3 miles in. I was the first guy. And the cadre were like, "Hey man, you're done." And I was like, no, I'm not quitting. Let's not construe what's going on here. I'm just in pain. And he's like, "Yeah, no, you're fine. Will, put your ruck on the freaking truck. You're good." And what I realized was that these guys were paying attention to all the, like, every day in, day out. These guys were studying us as students going through this course. And, they're constantly writing remarks, it's like counseling, right? They're keeping track of the good and the bad that you were doing. And so, they were convinced that I was good enough. And they graciously, they were like, "You're recycled. It's okay. You're not a drop. You get dropped, you're at needs of the Army, and you go to Korea, and I'm a cook again." And I would have lost the bonus. It would have been a whole mess. But instead, they allowed me to become, an assistant, if you will. So I would help the cadre out every day, as the class continued. They let me kind of hang out with them. And then the new class, my back got a little bit better. So now we're like 6 weeks into it. I was starting to feel better. I was coming to class every day. Well, I ended up sitting through 3 full 18 Echo courses, which is insane. Yeah, it was miserable. It was miserable because, in the sense to where, I'm healing, so I'm very thankful for the opportunity, right? But it's really, it kind of sucked because I was seeing my buds continue on, getting their Green Beret and going off to their Special Forces groups and teams. And then came my turn. I was supposed to be an insert at the end of the phase, just to do the last phase again, which I had already tested out. But there was no slots because no one failed out. So I had to start day one. So I was there. Yeah. So now I'm going through, this is the 4th time, right? The 4th and final time that I went through the commo course. And it's humorous because I knew all the jokes. I knew they tried and switched up my test because you have a lot of written tests. They would fuck with me more. They would put gigs in my radios and just unplug my batteries when I wasn't looking, and just really, really mess with me. It was cool. I got a chance to really work with a lot of senior guys that have been through a lot and have been around in the community. So finally, I graduate the Q course in spring of 2005 and end up going to 3rd Special Forces Group. It's kind of funny sitting here telling the story. Recently, my first company first company sergeant major had just retired. I think it was last week. 38 years in the Army, which is insane. That's
wow.
Yeah. I have 28 years in, but looking at him, I'm like, dang, that's it's a long time. But yeah, so I had guys like that. I was very, throughout my entire career, I had really, really good leaders. I think I might have had one or two bad leaders my entire career. And those guys moved away really quickly and out of my life. Like their paths just they may have crossed for a short period of time, but I was fortunate enough that they moved on quickly. I ended up on I walk into the company, introduce myself to my first company sergeant major, and he's, where are you from? I said, I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. He goes, really? Where? And I was like, Forest Acres. He goes, you know what? That's amazing. That's where I'm from. Where'd you?
Small world.
Yeah. Well, but that also got me. That did not help me at all. He goes, I like you. And I was like, no, nobody wants to be at the company level. You want to be on an ODA. And so I ultimately ended up, my first deployment in special forces was on a B team. So an AOB. It was sort of the best thing that happened to me. It was the worst because I wasn't on an ODA. All right. But it was the best because I had a bird's eye view of which team was doing the best and which had the best dynamic and just fit my personality, which, Joe, that's why I ended up on 3116. I had an opportunity to go to dive school after this rotation that I'm talking about. And this was in 2008, 2009. But something about going out with 3116, I went on a couple of ops with them, and just the cohesion that they had and the esprit de corps was completely different than anything else I had ever experienced in special forces. Being a new guy, I didn't really experience much. But while I was on that bird's eye view during that deployment, I had a chance to work with about 6 to 8 different teams. I got to see what right looked like, and their leadership on that team was strong. You're talking about Joe. You remember Floyd?
Yes.
Floyd and Chad and Ryan and they had just amazing leadership, and so that's what I wanted to emulate.
And I tell you one thing. I've worked with several other ODA teams, but one thing I can say with 3116, you guys, like you said, were a tight bunch, and you guys had ran a tight ship, and you just had that bond, and it was just an honor to work with you guys. And I remember after the first mission we did with you guys, it was kind of joint mission with you guys in 1231. Got first tick with you guys, and we had a little ceremony in the MWR room. We got a patch and everything, and I just thought that was so cool and the greatest thing. You grow up, watching movies like John Wayne's Green Berets and reading books, and be like, man, it'd be so cool to be a Green Beret and do this. And then here I am later on in life, working with you guys.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Hey, Will, just a quick, one of my buddies did the same path. He was 10 years in the Rangers, and then he went into Green Berets. I don't know if you might have ran across a guy named Mario Volpe.
Volpe.
He was a lunatic. He was Fort Bragg middleweight boxing champion at one time.
Okay.
Crazy kid.
That checks out all the adrenaline junkies. So that was the beginning of that chapter of becoming a Green Beret. After that 2008, 2009 trip, I immediately went down to 3116, which is at the end of the hallway, the other direction. And unfortunately, Floyd replace me. He was very upset about it. It still reminds me today, till this day, about it. He bust my chops, said I stole his job. And then so I felt like I owed him, as we're passing each other in the hallway, and I could see him coming. Now, Floyd, to put things in perspective, I'm 6'4", about 220 right now. I'm skinny compared to Floyd. Floyd is, or I'm lean, as the kids would say. But Floyd is about 6'6", 6'7", and about 290 pounds. He's a big guy. Yes, he is huge. And he's just a solid guy. And I'm walking down. I'm like, oh man, he's gonna hit me. He's gonna sucker punch me, or he's gonna tackle me, or whatever, and he's gonna end up kicking my ass. And he was just the nicest guy about it. He goes, it's your turn. Go do the right thing. Good luck. And so it's ironic because we ended up, about 9 months later in the same exact place at Camp Simmons, which is where I met Joe. Now Floyd is on the B team, or the AOB, and I'm on his, I took his spot on the ODA. After the incident that Joe probably told you about, the one he just mentioned right now, that was our first op. The second op was another shit show where a couple of guys got shot. It was like guys got caught in a near ambush on exfil. And then there's the third op is where I became the team sergeant. Now, so remember I just told you I was like the new guy on the team, but I was also a senior and I had been deployed a lot. About this, probably like it's my fourth deployment now. I wouldn't say that's a lot, but I probably had 2+ years in combat. And so they're like, hey, you're going to be the new team sergeant. And I'm like, all right. Okay. Well, that op, we go in, and on infill, one of the helicopters had brownout. It's where you can't see where he's going, overcorrects, ends up flipping into one of the calots, which is the compound. And ultimately we sat on that thing for probably 3 days before they decided to blow it up. And it was about a $17 million helicopter. Not my fault. But I jokingly say that's the op that I got fired. And so I asked Floyd after that op. I was like, you know what? I don't like being a team sergeant. You're not maneuvering an element. You're more like tracking what's going on, and kind of you're with the maneuver element, but you're not the guy. And so I wanted to be a part of the main effort, not just kind of behind the main effort. And so I asked Floyd, I was like, hey, I think you should replace me. And he's like, no. And so I went in one night and talked to the Star Major. And I was like, hey, plus we had 9 guys, by the way, because we had our original team sergeant had gotten blown up. That's what Joe was just telling you there, Mike Clark. The next op, our team sergeant got shot in the ass. And the third op was with me when we had the helicopter crash. And so we had guys getting hurt left and right. So now we're down to 9. And bringing Floyd to the team and him taking over was probably the best decision that we made. He had just came from the team. So that was like I don't know. That was me saying, hey, sorry for taking your position, but now, you've got it. You're in charge of the whole team. And we've been friends ever since. Anyways, that was 2010, excuse me, that trip there. We went back.
It was kind of crazy, Will. You're talking about, okay, back then when I met you in 2010, like I told my girlfriend and stuff, yeah, because I was in Quantico speaking, we're going to meet you for dinner. And last time I saw you, I said, well, he looks like a surfer. He's got like long hair and stuff. And then you show up and you're, half balding with the horseshoe going on. And I'm like,
yeah. Damn, Joe, you could have sold me better looking than that.
But you're still a good looking guy, though.
We all are. It's just time's not. So yeah, I was on 3116 for a couple more rotations, and it got time to where I kind of topped out at my my purpose, and I was like, I can do something want to be a little bit more part of the leadership on the team. So the idea was to become a warrant officer. And this is around 2011. Well, my life would change then because we just got a new warrant officer to our team, and his name was Mike Duskin. He and I became a sniper team together and spent a lot of time shooting. I don't know what it was, but my team always had like the largest guys in the entire company. Mike was 6'7", and he again was about 280, 290. There's a picture of him at our shooting school that is ran on Fort Bragg, and with Steve Austin. And he makes, Steve Coldstone Austin, right? He makes him look like a small human. So that's my sniper buddy, right? I was like, hey, his name's Mike Duskin. I say, hey, Chief, I want to put my warrant officer packet in. Do you support it? And he goes, yeah, but not this trip, maybe the next trip. And I was like, what? He's like, well, who's going to be my sniper buddy? I was like, oh, you got a point. So I postponed it, and I didn't get a chance. I didn't go to I didn't end up going till 2014. And at that point, we and I'll tell you why, because that was in 2011 when he said, hey, hold off. We've got this other trip coming up. You're the only 18 Echo, which is the communications sergeant. You're the lead trainer. It's going to be great. It's always going to be great. That's what everyone says. It's going to be the best rotation ever. And you hope and pray it's going to be the most violent and intense rotation ever, because that's why we're there. That's what we do. We feed off of it, right? So that we get there in September, and it was definitely violent. We were in the East, out in Afghanistan. My first time ever being in the East. And I will tell you, if you ever use Google and to plan off an operation, and you don't turn on, there's a setting to where you can over exaggerate the 3D to understand the terrain and how there's micro terrain, and there's the terrain main features. And what you don't have a respect for, being from the South, in the United States, growing up in Tampa or South Carolina, is mountains. They will eat your lunch all day, every day. And our first operation, I was looking for my first compound, and one of my buddies lazed it. And I tell you, it looked like it was, at the very top of an entire, the Empire State Building. I just looked straight up, and I'm like, there's no way there's no way. And yeah, that was it. We were off to a good start, and there was a couple of the teams that we were supporting. They started getting a lot of contact. We, in the first 45 days, we lost 5 Green Berets and numerous Afghan commandos. It was a rough beginning. One of which was a former teammate, and one of which was my teammate, which was Mike Duskin, my warrant officer. And that sucked. It kind of hit home, and, had to kind of take a day off when we got back and just kind of refocus. And so our team sergeant at the time, Jim Rooney, he was a great guy. He's from Boston. He's a really good guy, really respected throughout our company. But he said, hey, guys, let's take the next day or two off, and then we'll meet back in here. I believe it was a Thursday, and we'll go from there. And so when we got back into the JOC, which is the Joint Operations Center, kind of like where we do there's computers, there's a ready room attached to it. It's where all the business happens, all the planning happens, the briefings and whatnot. And so he's like, hey, we got all back together. He's all right. Everyone's done licking their wounds. It's time to get back after it. And we had to, because we still had another 8 months left to go on that rotation. And so pushing through that. Some would say it was, when I say pushing through it, it's best explained pushing it down, and suppressing is what we're really doing. And I'll explain a little bit later is how that manifests itself into something very negative and destructive. So that was the 12-13 trip. And I came back, and like I said, I went to the Special Forces Warrant Officer School. Finished there in May of 2014, and about 2 weeks later, I was deployed again. Same location I just mentioned, same exact location in the East, and now on my first team as a warrant officer. The irony there is that Floyd from my last team was now on this team, and about 6 other of my close friends, were also on that team. And that's the way it is. There's in Special Forces, it is a small knit group. You've got a company that's about 108. There's 6 teams in the company. Each team has about 12. Now that's traditional, right? There's different companies, may look different, but depending on the group and the mission and whatnot. But that's average what it is. So you spend a lot of time walking up and down the hallways, and going to the ranges with these guys, a lot of training. So they become your extended family. And so it's quite interesting that I would show back up. I would say it's ironic, but also it's kind of normal to show up and at least know a few people as a new warrant officer. Now that trip was a lot less exciting than the one I just described, where it was a lot less kinetic. A couple of guys, got wounded and whatnot. We didn't lose anybody on that rotation. Let's see, that takes us to about 2014, 2015. We went back to Afghanistan. If you notice, there's a theme here, right? Every year, literally since the time I graduated Q course, I was deployed. And sometimes the years, I would get back in a January or February, and we would deploy in the fall. There's a quick, I'd say, refit. So you go home, you take some leave, you do we call pre-mission training, which is about 30 to 45 days long, depending on where you do it. Ours is usually at Fort Bliss, El Paso. Joe, were you there with us? Did you ever go out to El Paso with us?
No, I didn't. Some of the guys did, but that was after I got hurt, and they, were doing more training. And and you talk about that deployment schedule, like you have just deployment after deployment, and as well as any, that really wears on you too.
It does, yeah. You bring me to a good point. So it wore on me so much that after the 2015 trip, I noticed my eyes were they were off a little bit, and meaning like I was looking through my scope, and my stadia lines, so the lines that are in there, right, they were blurry, and the target was also blurry. Typically, it's like one or the other are blurry, or sometimes you can manipulate your eyes to where the target is clear, stadia lines are slightly blurry. You play with the parallax, and then boom, it's both. They're like spot on. It's like HD. Then you're like, yeah, I'm good to go. My eyes weren't working the right way. Didn't think much about it. It was like the last 2 weeks in Afghanistan before I came home. Come back, do that same cycle I just described, and in 2016 I'm in Somalia, and 2017 into 2017, and towards the latter part of 16, as Joe said, it starts to wear on you. I started noticing some physiology changes. I had I was really stressed. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. So I started the wear and tear on that. On my mental status was a little bit, it was taking a toll. And so around, we got over there in about August, at about December timeframe. Yeah, it was early December. I found out my mom had stage 4 cancer again. Now, she had been fighting this thing for about at this time for about 6-7 years, and I was like, "Damn, this sucks." Because I was in the middle of planning a bunch of stuff, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be fine." Remember, I told you she's like this hippie, she's like happy, very optimistic woman, and she's also just the toughest human I've ever met. She could probably beat Joe up, but she was a complete badass, and it took a toll. Like I said, we were working for the SEALs at the time. And their commander, after one of our briefings, he said, "Hey, Will, I heard your mom. I have no idea how you heard. I didn't tell anybody. So I still to this day am unsure of how he found out. But he's like, hey, man, there's going to be an aircraft that's going to show up tomorrow for you, and you're going to get on it and fly home. And so I was like, yeah, we got this op coming up." And he's like, yeah, he's kind of like fixing his notebook. He's kind of like looking at it and like straightening it out. He goes, yeah, I'm not really asking you. I'm telling you what's going to happen. And I was like, okay, all right. Yeah.
So you were kind of voluntold.
I was voluntold to go hang out with my mom for Christmas. So I flew home, met my family in Wisconsin, and it was actually a really good time. I'm not gonna lie, it was awesome. I hadn't been at home because I had missed so many Christmases because my schedule, the way I was deployed, it's our battalion just always got the fall deployments and came back in the spring every time. So you're missing anniversaries, you're missing Christmases, you're missing birthday, every holiday you're missing, and school years, right? So there's blocks and times where I'm like, oh yeah, my kids will say something funny. They're now adults, and they'll say something. I'm like, oh man, that's hilarious. Where was I at? And they're like, yeah, you weren't there. Damn, that's tough, right? Year after year.
Yeah.
If you never heard me do this whole thing, I didn't really volunteer for much besides going to Airborne, Ranger, SF. There wasn't a specific mission that I ever said, hey, I'll go do that. I was excited. I was always excited to go. But that's just the way, that was my job, right? So I was working and doing what I thought was the right thing to do. And so like back to Joe's point, it takes a toll on you. And so I go see my mom, I come back, and I jump right back into it. What I didn't mention here is right before I went home, we did one more mission. Of course, I squeezed it in before Christmas. And we do this big hit. On the way out, IED goes off, my truck goes in it, and we fly out. And I hit my head really hard, and something happened in my neck. It was like a shotgun that went off. And it's ironic because the driver was a PJ. So that is a medic in the Air Force. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, damn, man, you're supposed to be the ones that are, they're your healers, not fucking up.
Yeah.
Broke my neck.
Oh, man.
It turns out I really did injure it. I had a couple fractures on my C5, 6, and 7 that later on would start to show, it would basically, I was feeling numbness in my hands and my feet. It wasn't making sense. So I wasn't getting any sleep when I got back on that second, after the holidays. And then so fast forward, this is where the wheels fell off the wagon here is we get back from that deployment, and probably around summertime, maybe it was May, we did a change. We had a formation, which is very rare in special forces. We don't really do a lot of formations. And I was standing there, and that same, they call it neuropathy, like the numbness was happening. And I was like, dude, what the heck? This is weird. I felt like I had like this weird sensation, like just the warmth kind of going down my body. And then it was that eye thing again, where my eyes were trying to equalize, if you will, because I was standing in the very back of a formation, and you have ranks, right? So it's like my eyes are just they're constantly like doing like this and trying to level out. Ended up making myself like almost black out. And I immediately went to like my medic was like standing a couple guys down, and afterwards I said, "Hey man, I don't think something's going on." That day I went to the docs over at behavioral health because when I explained it to my surgeon, he's like, it sounds neurological. So I went and talked to behavioral health because the numbness coupled with the different sensations it was like a panic attack, and they knew it. I didn't know it. I never would have thought I had a panic attack because I didn't get excited about anything, right? And so when it started, what's the word? Like exhibiting itself, like it was happening, right? I started freaking out internally, and it was weird. So I go over and talk to the behavioral health lady. She kind of reminded me of mom. She's like super cool. Hey, yeah, it's gonna be all right. I'm like, it's not all right because if we can't figure this out, I'm going to have to come off of a team, and it's like a career ender kind of thing. And that's what we thought, right? You do all this training, you go through, 2+ years of training to get to a special forces detachment or an ODA, and you want to spend your entire career there. In most cases, most guys will sabotage their promotion to E8 just to stay on a team and continue to do their job with their guys, because it's like leaving the family. And so I had that same sentiment, and I didn't know what to do. And so she goes, "Let me look into it. I'm going to get back with you today." And so by the time I got back to my office, which is maybe 20 minutes later, I had an email saying, "Congratulations, you've been selected to go to Walter Reed to this neurological behavioral clinic." So ultimately, I did that about maybe 4 weeks later. I mean, this is rapid. I went from being in a formation, right, with my buds, getting ready for my next deployment, to literally driving. I wasn't driving. I was being driven to Walter Reed. It was wild. They took when I showed up, they took all my belongings. They kind of went through them. I'm like, is everything okay? They're like, you just want to make sure you don't have any crazy meds or anything like that. And we got to take care. It was like, because I was inpatient. I didn't realize I was going to be inpatient. And so what ended up happening was, I'll kind of fast forward through this a little bit. I would spend the next 6 weeks doing a lot of neurological testing through a program. It's called NICO. And NICO is a program that was started in the early, mid 2000s for special operators. And NICO stands for National Intrepid Center of Excellence. And really what it is it's the, it's where they do a lot of testing for your brain, TBIs, PTSD. They do sleep disorders, sleep testing, things like that. So at the end of that, getting ready to come to we're getting closer and closer and closer to the 6th week. And I'm seeing guys come and go, and the guys that were going would have this board where, they would go in, they would call their command, and they would talk to their commander. Oh, looks like the Joe quit.
Oh, he fell off. I think he lives in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. Joe got bored. Yeah. You want me to keep going? You want me to hold up?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear.
Yeah. So, it's kind of scary, man, because it's one of those situations where, you're going to go into this board and they're going to tell you, it's coming. They're going to tell you're no longer going to be on a team. And ultimately that's pretty much what happened. Only except I knew my commander very well. He was one of my former team leaders. And so I prepped him that this conversation was going to happen. Like all good SF guys, I called him and said, "Hey, look, let's not pull the trigger on this yet." I convinced him to let's figure out what's going on. Cause really we had no idea, like David, I had my, Joe, you back?
Yeah, I
He's
lost
back.
my connection. I think we're good now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm telling him about towards the end of my stay at Walter Reed. There's a board, right? Where they bring the panel of docs in. There's about 8 of them, and they're all like neuropsychs, neurologists, you name it, behavioral, whatever. They're all there. They're on one side, you're on the other side, and they call your commander and they give them a synopsis, right? Now I've seen guys go in there and come out and they're like super pissed. A lot of SEALs, a lot of Marines, and SF guys. They come out, they're like, "That's it, man. I'm done." And so now it's my turn. However, Joe, I had prepped my commander because he was a buddy of mine, right? He's my former team leader. So I called him and we talked it through, and basically we agreed that I would continue to serve, but I would also continue my medical treatments to try and figure out what was going on before they retired me, because I was over 20 years at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like 8 years ago. And so we did just that. I get back, start going through it. That was the demise. I was married at the time. That was kind of like the demise of my marriage there. It's like, she's like, you're nuts. Like, this isn't going to work. You should want to stay home with us. And I'm like, I do, but you don't understand. Like, this is my job. This is like how I provide. And so I also thought it was, I think that I believe that things happen for a certain reason in life, right? It's not always for us. It's that like we can help others because we lived or something has happened to us, right? And so I just said I wasn't ready yet, and so I didn't, and I just kept going. And I started really thinking about more perseverance and grit, right? And that led me down a road of what's now they call it operator syndrome. And this is kind of like the third, we'll call this like the third chapter to get me right here, right? I started studying this operator syndrome. It's basically where you've got, it's a real thing. I didn't make it up, but at the time I didn't know it existed. I didn't read any publication on it. And again, this is in 2017. I had a lot of time to think in Walter Reed. And I'm kind of mapping this out. I'm like, okay, hey, this is, there's a guy, it's me, little circle. He gets an injury. Okay. Or he does all this training, and it became like a life cycle. It does all this training, all these deployments, injury happens. Right. Okay. After the injury, he comes off of a team, and now he's like, and I drew like this little island. Now you got this guy on an island. Everything he knew to be true, like all of his boys were like his best friends, his brothers, like the family, right? Remember how I grew up? I was a broken family. So these guys were my family. Now it's snatched away from me. And now I'm over here doing the staff stuff. It's all good too. Like that's important, right? It enables the teams, but it's not what I had signed up to do. And so I'm having this whole, this struggle to process all this stuff. That put me in a slump for a long time. Then COVID hit. I'm still in the military, still pushing through, deployed a couple more times. Now I'm more in Africa deployment. So I was going to Djibouti and Somalia a couple more times. And so it was kind of interesting, looking back now. Obviously I know what I was doing. I was suppressing everything. I say I was pushing through, but really I was pushing down and not dealing with the real shit that was going on. And so I ultimately, let's see, that was about in 2022, I got hired to be where I'm at now. I relocated. I'm in Virginia, stationed at Fort Belvoir. And so when I moved up here, I was on that island again. I moved away from everything that I knew, starting a new life, away from, the team life and Green Berets and whatnot. And so that ultimately led me down a really dark path of just not knowing how to, figure it out. Started seeing a therapist, and we started unpackaging a lot. I wish there was like a disclaimer before you go see a therapist and you want to, she's like, hey, do you want to do the work? And I was like, yeah, of course. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to work my ass off. We're going to get right. I didn't realize she was going to dig up like my childhood shit, the reason why it makes me tick, and get down in the psychology of the making of who I am, make me read a bunch of books and whatnot.
Well, and it's kind of crazy. You talked about, suppressing it and burying it deep down. And we know now that that's the worst thing you can do, because unless you address it or deal it, it's going to pop up when you don't want it to pop up.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's going to fester when you don't want it to fester.
Yeah, that's true. And really, Joe, that's what happened. So, last year, August 20th, I decided, you know what? I'm not feeling this anymore. I'm tired of being sick and tired. This is just not working. And so I made a decision to end it. And so I sent out my text to my friends and prepped myself and prepared, to end my life. And it wasn't, I talked to Floyd actually. He's like, so we're like talking about it after the fact. And obviously I'm here. So yeah. I'll tell you exactly how that went down. It's interesting. But it was the fact that I didn't make the decision because, I would say like I was hurting or I wanted it to stop. I made a decision because I thought that was the right decision to make it stop. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I saw something that needed, I saw a problem. And for the longest time that I could think of, everything I tried wasn't working. And so I knew that if I did this one thing, it would stop. It turns out that I am not good at killing myself. So that is a good thing. After I hung myself, it took a lot of bourbon and sleeping pills to get the balls to do that. And when I let go to do it, I don't know how long it was, but I felt I describe it to guys. I felt like 2 feet were on my back and like ninja kicked me. And I was joking. My uncle had died probably 8 months before this. And I told my family, I was like, my Uncle Chris just ninja kicked me off the rope, and I landed on my back, knees bent, looking at the sky. I had tears in my eyes. And I was like, all right. I laughed just like this. I was like, okay, all right, God, you've got my attention. And then I saw a bunch of blue lights, jumped up and ran, right? Turns out my daughter had called the cops and they showed up to help me out because I just didn't know how to process it. I was kind of like, I was going into like a manic spin, downward spiral. Didn't know how to stop it. And so, really nice guys, I was watching them look for me. I'm kind of sitting in the bush, watching them walk by and, and I said, no, this is stupid. I'm done. I'm cause I felt like, it didn't work. So let's get some help. And so
now let me ask you, when you took off and ran, did you throw a ghillie suit on real quick so you could blend into the outdoors?
I was literally in a bush about 6 inches or so away from the police officers as they were walking by, and I felt guilty that I was like kind of like being childish about it. And I said, no, you're delaying the process. And so I stepped out and I sat on a stoop, not mine, but a block over, and kind of was like, all right, let's do it. And so I walked down and said, excuse me, are you guys looking for someone? They're like, yeah. And I was like, I think it's me. And they're like, get over here, Mr. Reese. And it was pretty cool. The captain of the police station was there, and he's like, my dad was a Vietnam vet. He did take his own life. And so I was like, oh man, all right, I'm sorry. He's like, no, man, I'm glad I'm gonna help you. And so they they asked me where I wanted to go. I asked them, I just drink a liter of bourbon and like 30 sleeping pills. I don't know what's going on. So take me where, I don't know. And so like, hey, we're going to take you to, how about Walter Reed? And I said, that sounds great. I've been there before. And so they take me down there, and I get there, and about, I don't know, about 6 hours later, one of my teammates show up. His name's Ryan. You met him, Joe, Ryan Macero.
Yes.
He shows up and he's like, what are you doing, man? I was like, I don't know. I just got tired, and we laughed and cried and hugged, and he's probably spent 2 or 3 hours with me. And it was it kind of brought me back. Right. So it was, even though I'm not on a team anymore, people still love me. Right. And I didn't, even though I felt like I was on an island, dude, I'm still loved. Joe loves me. I love Joe. He's great. We've been in combat together. Like we're close friends. We talk all the time. And just because we're not together on, at the same proximity, we're still a part of that team. Like we're still brothers. And so it hit me, even though I was coming off my buzz, sort of. I was intoxicated for about 14 hours before they would take me upstairs to the psych ward. And so later that afternoon, when Ryan left, he stayed with me pretty much all day. I went upstairs and I went right in to talk to the docs. There I am in front of a panel of other docs, new set of docs, right? So I'm sitting there, and they're like, psychologists. There's 7 of them. There's psychologists, neuropsychs. I've been here before. I made a joke, and I was like, she's like, do you know why you're here? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm here because I may be good at killing other people in combat, but I'm not good at killing myself. And they're like, I was like, guys, it's a joke.
Yeah, when you probably said that at first, their jaws probably dropped,
And I was like, okay, we're gonna have fun together. Look, I surrender. Like I'm done fighting whatever this is, and I just want to get help. And I feel like I'm in a good place. And man, I'll tell you what. I said, whatever you have available, I volunteer for whatever intake that you have. And so if it's inpatient for months, I don't care. Let's do it. It's that I ended up going to a place called Strong Hope out in Salt Lake City, Utah. Spent about 40 days there after my week at Walter Reed. Excuse me. And it was awesome, man. I was really supported by my command, and really just, solidified that, even though I'm struggling or we have bumps in the roads, that it's okay. It's going to be it's going to be like a difficult, even though it's like a difficult time, your true friends will always be there, which I would say all of my friends are true friends. And so I just felt really cared about and loved on. And so I was able to, I had never once had the time to just work on me and like, hey, I have a problem. The program I was in is structured behind AA. And so it's like my first interaction with these guys. So now I'm on this floor, right, of other military guys. There's 15 of us. And I was like, oh, the irony. I'm always this is me, right? Just talking to myself. Spent 7 days at Walter Reed, came out of that. Now I'm hanging out with a bunch of strangers. And I was like, the irony here is fun. And I said, hey guys, my name's Will. And, about a week ago, I tried to, take my life, and I'm here just to do the work, man. And they were like, oh, I think you're in the wrong program, man. This is different. And so I actually went through the substance and PTSD portion, which was eye-opening in itself, because it really allowed me to understand the way I was raised, my parents. It allowed me, it's the same curriculum. They use cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. So it's like, hey, we identify the problem through CBT. They use a form of CPT, which is identifying like what exactly is the root. So like, why am I angry? Well, I'm angry because I felt, I feel ashamed of something that, that Joe's bringing up that I'm inadequate in. And so now I'm able to like, okay, I feel shameful because when I was little, I used to get, fucked with because of this. And so now I'm having to deal with it. And so they give you the tools through dialectical behavioral therapy to deal with it. And that process, it has 13 steps in it. And it's really, really good. How it helps you, the service members, go through, through the entire process of dealing with it. You have your tools and kind of come back and revisiting it after the initial intensive therapy. So after that was done in Utah, I came back, went through another program at Walter Reed. This time it was more outpatient, where I was able to, sit with more people whom I didn't know, talk about all these other things. It's a very, very humbling, very humbling. You go through and your brain, I won't say brainwashed, but you're told like, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best of this, you're the best of that. You got to be the best, got to be number one. And man, when you're not number one, you get knocked down a little bit. It makes you realize that a lot, actually. It makes you realize that there's a lot more out there, and there's a lot more to life than just being a Green Beret. I'm also a dad. I'm a brother. I'm a boyfriend. I'm all these different things. And so being a Green Beret is something that I did. It's not my identity. And so one of the cool things that I was able to do, guys, is I like to share this is really important to me is I was able to redefine values. What do I believe in? The next thing is your beliefs. What do I believe in? So I have my values. So like, hey, these, 3 or 4 things are like the most important thing, right? So my first one was, what is important to me? Well, that's my time. My time is like the most valuable thing that I have. Because you can't replicate time, right? So, and then family. So time with my family, because all that time I mentioned that I was gone, right? And so I've spent the last year is rebuilding those relationships, not only with my children, but my friends and even my family members, taking that opportunity to go visit them instead of pushing it off to do some work. And then my beliefs. So how do I, in worldview, do I want to believe that the world is against me, even though like there's somebody flips me off or cuts me off? No, man, go ahead. My view on that is now that person might be late to going to work. They're going to lose their job. Ultimately, you're going to get kicked out of their house and get evicted. Something like that. It's changing. Instead of getting angry and pissed off at everything that doesn't go my way, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to choose my battles. And then my worldview. The world is a lot of things. It's beautiful. There's a ton of beautiful things. Some of the people in the world are bad, but there's a lot of good people too. And it's really changing your mindset and how you approach things. Because I tell you, I didn't like where I was last year and the years before that mentally. And now that I have the tools and, moving forward in my life, I'm just going to, move in a different direction. It's like my energy. Who do I want to spend my energy with? Do I want to share that? Or do I want to be around this toxic, environment where it's just negative and just pulling me down instead of lifting me up? Now, there's times where, you talked about pushing through. There's times where, going full circle, where you got to get, Joe's got to say, Will, you got to get your shit together. You keep messing up on these things right here. And I have to like look and introspectively and say, you know what? He's right. And the reason why I'm able to do that now is because I went through the therapy and it helps me out a lot. I'll pause there. That's a lot.
No, that's amazing stuff because I can identify. I don't know if I told you, Joe, I'm writing a book about my life kind of and
Yes.
explained about the childhood. So when I'm bringing up all these repressed memories of fights and, abuse, and I could name a lot of things, and it's like, Will, I almost ended up in prison because I was beating the hell out of everybody. I was just a wild man. And if it wasn't for good people intervening and my faith in God, I'd be in
Yeah.
jail or dead for sure.
Same. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The same kind of with me, Will. It's like I knew, after I got shot and I was sitting in Walter Reed that's the National Naval Medical Hospital. They came. You have PTSD. You have PTSD. I knew I had it, but didn't admit it, and nothing got better. It destroyed my marriage. It destroyed friendships, relationships. It didn't get better until I admitted that I had it and asked for help and went out there and got help, because my mental game was a mess. And
it's liberating, isn't it, Joe?
Yes, it is, because I got to the point where, I had a gun to my head the last time, and I said, I just, Joe, you can't live like this anymore. You can't do this. I just got mad and then took action.
Yeah. And that's, I'm looking at your logo here. The grind is not pushing through or pushing down. It's everything that Joe just said, hey, I got a problem, and taking that action and that frustration and going in a positive direction. It's really hard to pivot. I think that in years past, what we're talking about right now was not cool to talk about, or, getting help. We didn't make time for mental health. In our generation, quite frankly, just didn't believe any of that stuff was okay, and so you just kind of deal with it, right? That's your parents would say, hey, you fall down, scuff up your knees, just deal with it.
Yeah, just get up, take a knee, drink some water, and go on with it, and that's the problem. Is I tell people, I don't care if you're the most elite special operations soldier in the world, the bottom line, we're still human beings. Right. We're not superheroes. We're not we feel pain, we feel sadness, we feel everything. We're human beings, and it's tough, that, and we want to have this bravado. I can handle it. I can take it. I can take it. But, you got to be smart. You got to know, when to push through something and when to get help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's something to touch on with Will is when you recognize that being a teams guy was something you did, it wasn't who you were.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to a lot of these bodybuilding guys that me and Joe know. I'm like, that's just what you do. That's not who you are, but you guys got to learn to split that and leave that over there when you leave it. Because Joe knows there's people that just keep taking all kinds of drugs, wanting to achieve something that I don't even know what it matters anymore, right? And
yeah, no, I get it.
wreck their life.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, this, David. Sometimes before you go on, you're backstage, you go on stage, and you got these guys. I'm going out there. I'm going to do battle. You ain't going out there to do battle. Nobody's going to kill you out there. This is easy. This is the time to show your hard work and have fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that pisses me off in prep when people are like, "Yeah, going to war." It's like, you're not a warrior, dude. Will's a warrior. Will's a warrior. I just did.
You get these guys, on Facebook. I'm, AF, alpha as fuck, and usually if you have to say you're alpha, you're probably not alpha.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more. My girlfriend and I actually talk about this. It's more attractive to be like, you know what? I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to do the work. And I keep saying that, right? There's a really good book. It's called Do the Work. But I'm really like, I'm actually going to read a book about why I'm acting and feeling the way I'm feeling. And I will tell you guys, I grew up in church, and so I believe in God. I'm a Christian, and I feel like over time I've drifted really far away from my beliefs and my faith. And it took that night on the 20th of August to be in that position at the lowest. I mean, I don't know if there was any lower that I could have been in my life. Like seriously, because I felt like I was doing, that was it. And so to be lifted out of that and to feel the high that I have now every day when I wake up, it's great, and I'm just thankful to God that I have another chance. And so I know we talked about before, things happen for a reason. And I truly believe that my mission in life is to help others. The altruistic, walk for me is in life is so important. And so giving back and helping others, battle through, if you will, or work through, the mental struggles is like very uplifting for me. It's my new it's my new jam. It's my new mission. Yeah. It is my new mission. And so, that's me, guys.
And that's how I felt, Will, too. After I got shot, from all intents purposes, I should have been dead. I should have not survived. And God had more for me to do in this world. And I believe a lot of that is going, doing my motivational speaking, talking to people, when people, are thinking, they're having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, there's a lot of other people struggling, and it could always be worse too. You just, so I was never one big on public speaking, but I just kind of fell into it and I enjoy it. But it's in a way I'm still able to help people.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're around still, Joe.
Thank you. And I'm glad you are too, Will.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
You guys are two quality human beings. Obviously, I look at you as like extended family now, Will, because you're friends with one of my good friends. So
thanks.
And I have nothing but admiration and respect for what you've done.
It's kind of crazy, Dave. I'll kind of tell a story. Is when you bought your carbine and we got that optic for you, and we're at my buddy's house shooting, and I was kind of walking you through, and you saw me shoot, and it's like, Joe, it didn't seem like you're even blind. You're doing this. I said, yeah, but I did this for so long. It's just like second nature, shooting and stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
No, man. The good thing is all three of us have kind of committed ourselves to, number one, Christ, number two, helping. There's so many people that want to destroy stuff in this society. I want to be a builder, not a breaker, man.
Yeah, same. Absolutely.
No, it's awesome.
I always tell, I share that story often now, the latter part of my story. And to all walks of people, but specifically in the military, higher ranking people, and say, hey, you're a leader, right? So if you have people who are hurting or need help, please feel free to give them my cell phone number and reach out. I don't even need to know their name, but I can help lead them into the right direction for seeking, self-help and things like that. There's a lot of programs out there that helps folks struggling.
I heard that the Japanese military, I believe, they, how they indoctrinate you, then they train you up. They do the same thing when you leave, like for like a year, to help you assimilate back into society. Yeah, you guys are used to being teammates. Joe is in law enforcement, everything. That's your family. Your family was the guys, and then you had a family. But the people that you relied on, that's a hard duality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so. It is. It is. The military is doing better at that, I think, compared to times past, is that transition period. It's really, it's harped upon in special forces and special operations writ large, is take the time to do a proper transition. So you're not on the island, as I mentioned several times tonight, and feeling like you're alone or don't know which way to go, or your teammates have continued walking where you just kind of stopped your life.
it took a lot of courage for you as a guy who's been out there, put his life on the line, been through a lot, could have been killed numerous times, injured, and you had the courage to say, you know what, I need help. There's a lot of people that struggle in civilian life that don't want to seek help because I have to admit that I'm weak at something, and that's
Yeah.
the wrong mentality. So
Yeah. It took a lot. It took a lot for me to ask for help. It really did. Yeah.
well, I think we're all glad you did. So
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
yeah, no problem at all. Well, guys, it was a hell of a conversation. Will,
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
what an amazing career. Any plans on when you're gonna retire, or are you just gonna keep going?
Yeah. Again, I'm over about 28 and a half years in right now. I'm probably going to drop my retirement packet here in about a year or so, and then take my own advice and transition properly as much as needed, into the next chapter of life.
Well, I think there's a lot of value in your testimony and your story, and I think there's probably a really good career path out there for you to do some of the things that Joe's doing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Move the masses, not just this one-on-one. The message could be tremendous. So I really appreciate you sharing all that. So,
Oh, thanks. I didn't know where to go, so I just
dude,
told you.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, you did a great job, Will, and I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, we do. Too many. It kind of I see a lot of teams, guys get pissed off because there's a lot of SEALs that like the bravado. They write in books, and I remember it as just being a silent community that didn't talk much about stuff. And I think your message resonate far and wide with people. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I hope that you continue on that mission to help people. So
okay, yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the encouragement. Appreciate you both for having me on.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
You're quite welcome.
Okay,
Listen,
let me know,
guys. Have a great night. Keep grinding, guys. You don't give up. You know what I mean? You just got to keep moving forward. And, time will pass. Wounds will heal. So,
that's right.
You know what I mean?
Thanks, David. Appreciate it, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and who knows how this goes? We might have you back again if you're willing to discuss some more stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, guys.
For sure. Will, thank you again. Joe, good night. Will, good night.
All right, good night, fellas.